So we're going to look at a couple of different tests today. And the difference between, say, a unit test and an end-to-end test. They're the two main ones.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of tools around it and some choices you need to make. So there's not really too much of a choice, which is one of the benefits of Angular. I'm kind of contradicting myself because when you go the Angular way, the community 99% of the time is doing the same thing. And that's very similar with testing.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a bigger framework in that you get everything you need in one box. And that's the same with testing. So when you're talking about unit testing here, the main tools is that you have Karma as a test runner. There's a whole bunch of buzzwords if you haven't heard these before for more frameworks. But Karma comes from Google, and basically it just runs your tests. Doesn't write them, doesn't do anything else, just picks them up and runs them.
It's the JavaScript way. Noun.js.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Sausage roll JS is the next big one coming.
Okay.
So we've got Karma as our test runner, and then you have Jasmine, which is your testing framework. So Jasmine is the syntax you use to write your tests, but there's a whole bunch of helpers for spying and faking and other sorts of things, which we'll see today.
Nice. So you don't have to actually come up with a lot of this stuff yourself. You do need to kind of understand how to use it.
No, and it's quite. We're at a point now, like these frameworks are more than 5 years old.
Yeah.
Or libraries, and they're very robust, they're very good. And the way we use them with Angular now, Angular 2 or higher being out for a couple of years or more now, means that also the documentation's really good. So on the angular.io/testing or something like that, you can just go look for it. There's an amazing set of documentations we'll talk through the things that we're looking at. But the challenge with those docs is that's kind of like, they're very dry. There's like, this is how you would fake a service. But it doesn't kind of get into, should you fake the service or should you use the real service and just swap out parts? So we're going to talk more about some of those bits and how to do it.
Yep.
But the docs are must read as well. If you're going to be writing tests, you should watch this and also read the docs.
Gotcha.
So Jasmine's the tool for that. It uses like this BDD or behavior-driven design sort of syntax, which I'll show you in a sec. And then there's Angular itself. Angular is a big part of the testing tools. There's a lot of Angular testing helpers, like async and face async and other things that are a big part of it. Now, one of the choices, and I struggle with this a little bit myself, is there's another testing tool. So these testing tools come out of the box with the Angular CLI, and it's what almost most of the teams I see are using. But if you're on the other side of the fence and you're doing React, then there's another testing tool from Facebook called Jest. So Jest is really awesome.
Yeah, I've actually heard of Jest. Yeah, so I'm starting to kind of go, I know what that is.
So Jest is really cool, and I've used Jest and I really like it because it's a little bit faster, but it's also got this thing called snapshot tests, where you can take a snapshot of the HTML and just assert against that. And you say, well, in my test, once I do my setup and execute the test, I expect the HTML to look like this.
Yep.
Like pixel by pixel in the HTML, and that's what I get. And if it changes, then the test fails.
Yeah, nice.
So that can be really quite cool, and I've seen a fair few people using this.
Okay.
But this decision's not one to make lightly, so I've started a project recently in the last few months, and we've got a lot of tests in there, and I was showing a colleague the other day who's not on our team, and he goes, oh, why didn't you use Jest? I'm like, oh, I'm not using the coolest library.
No, I'm building my own. No, you're not.
Yeah. But it was more around saying, well, this is what comes out of the box. I was using NX and NJRX, and the tooling's quite strong around it, and the developers I'm working with know the Jasmine and the Karma stuff, and they don't know the Jest stuff, and it's not as easily integrated, and it's not hard, but that was kind of the decision around it. I wanted to keep it simple for everyone.
Again, pragmatism, right?
Exactly.
You got to be productive as well.
But it's worth checking out. If you're going to write a lot of tests, I'm kind of back and forth in between the two.
Sure.
Okay, so that's your unit tests. When you're talking about end-to-end tests, there's a library called Protractor, and Protractor is an Angular tool that sits on top of Selenium WebDriver for doing end-to-end tests.
I've used Selenium actually, quite some years ago, but it's still around and it's very good.
Yeah, so if you've used Selenium, you'll be very comfortable using Protractor. It's very similar, except it allows you to get some hooks into Angular, where you can say, wait for Angular to be ready, or select this element via a directive, an Angular directive, and things like that.
Yep.
And navigate with Angular and so forth.
Okay.
And that also uses Jasmine as the syntax and the language that you write, so it feels very comfortable across the two.
Sure.
Okay. So they're kind of the main testing tools that you have. Now, the Angular CLI is also a testing tool in my mind because one of the hard bits of testing is setting up all of your frameworks to actually pick up all your test files, because you actually need to build the Angular application, then pass it off to Karma to run and pick up all your tests and run them. So all of that's done for you out of the box when you use the CLI. And as it updates with it. And so basically, as you see, you get it, you just run it, and it's done. So not only great for learning, it's just also just saves a lot of time.
It's convenient.
Yeah. And if you wander off and start using Jest, you'll have to set that up and you'll probably lose half a day kind of.
Yeah, so it's a decision, right? If you need the features that aren't Jest, then you go for that. Yeah.
So the CLI is one, and then there's my favorite one, which is called Wallaby.
Which is very Australian.
Very Australian. And they've got another one called Quokka.
Also very Australian. Look up Quokka. If you Google Bing Quokka, and it'll make your day. It's fantastic. So
Wallaby is I really like Wallaby. You have to pay for it. It's $100 US. I buy it every year. I think I'm in my 3rd year of buying it. I really like the tool if you're going to be writing tests more frequently than every month, or your team's doing a lot of testing, because it gives you live feedback right inside of your IDE.
Oh, wow.
And not just that, like rather than being in the console, you can console log in the screen and it superimposes it over the screen. You'll see me use it all day today. I really like it. Do you need it? No. It's perfectly fine to run Karma and Jasmine just straight into the terminal on your machine. That's what most people do.
Yeah.
And even when you go to continuous integration, you're going to need to have something as well as running your tests with Wallaby, because it doesn't work in your continuous integration environment to actually run your tests there where you really want to run your tests. It's just for the developer to be able to write the tests.
Okay.
So,
but it must be worth it if you're paying for it. Like there's an upside to it, right?
Huge. You'll see that today.
Okay.
You'll get at the end of doing what we do. You'll be able to go, is it $100 for me or my boss? We'll find out.
Yep.
So it's quite good. And it runs in Visual Studio. It runs in Visual Studio Code. It runs in Sublime and all of the main IDEs.
Okay.
So it's a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah.